the woman who starved so I could eat. She never asked for glory. She never wanted gold. All she ever wanted was to see me fed, to see me safe, to see me smile. While the world slept in comfort, she sat awake beside an empty plate, whispering to God, "Let him never feel hunger." Her stomach ached, but her heart was full, because my peace was her feast. She used to hide her share of food. "I'm not hungry," she'd say, smiling through the hollowness. But I knew later, those words were her sacrifice in disguise. Her hunger became her prayer. Her emptiness became my life. She wasn't a queen by crown, but she ruled every heartbeat of my world. Her love had no kingdom, yet I bowed before it, because even kings have never loved like she did. Rain would fall, and she'd cover my head with her own shawl. Though her clothes were soaked, winter would bite, and she'd give me her blanket, pretending the cold didn't touch her bones. And when I slept, she'd stay awake just to make sure the storms outside never entered my dreams. Her love was wordless, not the kind you write, but the kind you live. Every bruise on her hands was proof of devotion. Every line on her face, a verse of poetry written by sacrifice. People say mothers are angels, but no, angels have wings. She had scars. Angels live in heaven. She built heaven from hunger, from sleepless nights, from prayers that cost her everything. I remember once, I asked, "Why didn't you eat?" She smiled and said, "Because my hunger ends when you're full." That was her truth. Simple, divine, heartbreaking. She never taught me luxury. She taught me gratitude. She said, "If you ever see someone hungry, feed them. That's how you feed me too." And now, when I offer food to a stranger, I feel her hand on mine. Warm, forgiving, eternal. There were nights when the kitchen was quiet, and the cupboards nearly bare. But she moved through that silence, like a saint in a storm. No fear, no complaint, only faith. She would boil water, pretending she was cooking, so I wouldn't notice the emptiness. Then she'd place a little in my bowl, and whisper, "Eat, my child. It's enough." And somehow, that little became plenty, because her love fed more than my body. It fed my soul. Sometimes she would hum softly, a tune older than sorrow. Her voice trembled, but she sang anyway, as if melody could chase hunger away. And when I'd ask why she didn't join me, she'd say, "I've already eaten." But the truth was written in the quiet ache of her eyes. She wasn't just starving for food. She was starving for rest, for care, for someone to notice the way her heart bled silently. Yet she never asked for rescue. She only asked God to bless me. I remember the winters, cold and cruel. Our fire would fade, and she'd wrap me in her arms, letting the frost bite her instead. Her body shook, but her love stayed strong. Even suffering bowed to her devotion. She didn't need a throne. She sat on the floor, with empty hands, and still ruled my life like royalty. Her crown was invisible, but realer than gold. It shone in her sacrifices, in her patience, in her faith that never broke. Sometimes she'd look out the window at the stars, whispering prayers under her breath. Her hunger never made her bitter. It made her gentle. Her pain didn't harden her heart. It polished it. She believed God watched her hunger and turned it into blessings for me. When neighbors mocked her poverty, she smiled softly and said, "Let them speak. My child will rise one day, and my hunger will have been worth it." That was her dream. Not to be full, but to see me fulfilled. Her hands told the truth her mouth didn't. They were rough, cracked, tired from endless work. But when they touched my face, They felt softer than silk. Those hands fed me, cleaned my tears, and built my world piece by piece. How can the world measure such love? How can anyone understand the holiness of a mother's hunger? It's not just the absence of food. It's the presence of love that chooses to suffer silently, so another may live freely. If she was tired, she hid it behind laughter. If she was weak, she covered it with prayer. If she was empty, she filled others instead. That was her way. To starve, but never complain. To give, but never boast. To love, and never expect return. And now that I'm older, I see her in every sacrifice I make. I see her reflection in the selfless acts I once took for granted. She was not just my mother. She was mercy disguised as a woman. At night, when the world was asleep, I would sometimes wake up and see her sitting in the dark, her hands folded, her lips moving silently, eyes glistening with unshed tears. I used to think she was sad, but now I know. Those tears were not weakness. They were prayers. They were conversations between her and God, spoken in the language of love and surrender. Every drop that fell was a seed planted in heaven, and I am the fruit of those prayers. Her hunger was her offering. Her tears were her faith, and her silence was her worship. Sometimes the candle would burn low, and its light would dance on her face, revealing the fatigue she hid so well. Her cheeks were pale, her lips dry, but her eyes, they still carried stars. The stars of hope, the stars of belief, the stars of a mother who would rather break than let her child bend. When dawn came, she would wipe her face, wash her eyes, and greet the morning as if nothing had happened. No one knew she cried. No one saw the battlefield she fought each night. But I know now. That's where heroes are made. There were days when she'd pretend she'd eaten, and I believed her. She would smile, push the last piece of bread toward me, and say, "Your hunger hurts me more than mine." And when I finished, she would kiss my head, as if feeding me fed her too. I didn't understand then that love so pure can make a woman deny her own body just to keep her child whole. It's a kind of love that no book can describe, no poet can capture fully, and no heaven can ever forget. When people mocked her worn clothes, she only smiled. When they whispered about her poverty, she looked toward the sky and said, "One day, they'll know what wealth truly means." Because her richness was never in gold or silver. It was in the way she gave everything, even her hunger, for the sake of someone else. The world saw rags. God saw royalty. There were times she'd hum lullabies, even though her throat was dry. She'd stroke my hair, her fingers trembling from weakness, but her voice steady, steady like the heartbeat of heaven. And I'd fall asleep, believing everything was fine. She never let me see the storm behind her smile. Now, when I look back, I realize those lullabies were her shield. Her songs kept fear away. Her voice built walls of safety around my dreams. She had no army, but she fought hunger, sorrow, and time. And she won every night. I wonder how many nights she went to bed empty. How many times she whispered to God, "Just one more day of strength." And He gave it, because souls like hers make even angels bow in awe. She didn't need to be remembered by the world. Her love was eternal, and eternity doesn't need applause. It just needs a heart that remembers. I remember the day I finally understood. I was older, stronger, and far away from the little house where she built dreams out of nothing. I had food on my plate, a roof over my head, and shoes without holes. Everything she once wished for me. But comfort came with a price. The silence of missing her. The warmth of her hands. The softness of her voice. They were gone. And only then did I realize how much of her life she'd quietly given away, so I could build mine. That day, I sat alone at a table full of food. I picked up a piece of bread, and suddenly I saw her face, her thin fingers offering it to me, her eyes saying, "Eat, my child, eat." I couldn't take another bite, because that bread carried her hunger. It carried the nights she went to bed empty, so I could sleep full. And for the first time, the food that once filled me now made me cry. They say mothers don't die. They just change homes. And I believe that now, because sometimes, when I look at the sky, I feel her eyes watching me. When I hear the wind, it sounds like her voice calling my name. And when I help someone in pain, I feel her smile through me, as if she's whispering, "That's my child." I once asked her, "Amy, why don't you ever buy new clothes?" She laughed softly and said, "Because I already have everything I need, you." I didn't understand then. Now I do. She wasn't saving money. She was saving love. Every thread she wore thin was a thread she wove into my future. There were mornings when she'd faint quietly in the kitchen, and when I asked if she was okay, she'd say, "Just tired." But tired was a lie. Tired meant hungry. Tired meant weak. Tired meant she hadn't eaten again, because she wanted me to. And yet, she never complained. She never asked for gratitude. Her love was so silent, so selfless, that it became invisible to everyone, except heaven. Years later, when I stood at her grave, I whispered, "Amy, I finally understand." And in that moment, the wind grew still. A leaf brushed my face, as if she were saying, "I know, my child. I always knew you would." I left food there, not as an offering, but as an apology. For every meal I ate while she starved. For every smile I missed while chasing dreams. For every "I love you" I never said out loud. Now, every time I see a mother feeding her child first, I see her. Every time I see worn hands serving food, I see her. And when I hear someone say, "She sacrificed everything for her children," I close my eyes and whisper, "Yes, I know what that means." Because I've lived it. Because I was that child. Fed by her hunger, loved by her silence, and raised by a woman the world ignored. But I can never forget. It's been years since she left this world. But her presence hasn't faded. It has only changed form. I don't see her face anymore, but I feel her everywhere. In the morning breeze, in the softness of my heart, in the tears that fall when I remember her hands. Because love like hers doesn't die. It transforms. It becomes the invisible force that keeps you gentle in a world that tries to make you hard. When life broke me, I heard her voice inside me say, "Get up, my child. I didn't raise you to surrender." And every time I fell, it was her unseen hands that lifted me again. She is not here, but she still teaches me. She reminds me to share, to forgive, to be kind, because she built me out of kindness itself. I've met many people since then, some rich, some powerful, some who command respect, but none had her dignity. She had nothing, yet she gave everything. She wore old clothes, but carried a royal heart. And I realize now, she was never poor. The world measured her with money, but I measure her with love. And by that measure, she was the richest woman I've ever known. Sometimes I dream of her. She's sitting in her old chair, a cup of tea beside her, smiling softly, as if waiting for me to come home. I rush to her, But before I reach, she fades, like a candle's last flicker. And I wake up crying, but also smiling, because even in dreams, she still chooses to visit. Her love still feeds me. Not my stomach anymore, but my soul. It feeds the compassion in me, the patience, the strength to face hunger, not for food, but for understanding, for peace, for her. I tell her story now, to strangers, to friends, to children who still have their mothers. I tell them, don't wait until she's gone to see her worth. Don't let her die hungry for your love. Because I did, and that regret never leaves. She is gone. But every time I share her story, it feels like I'm giving her another meal. A meal of remembrance, of gratitude, of love that doesn't fade with time. And one day, when my time comes, I know she'll be waiting, smiling like she always did, saying, "See, my child, I told you, love never ends."